Hello and welcome back to LDC FM. You're tuning into our podcast featuring interviews with our community of independent designers and industry guests. We'll be discussing topics of sustainability, conscious design, the future of fashion, tech, and innovation. This podcast has been recorded alongside an Instagram Live, so apologies for any technical issues prior to tuning in. Thank you for listening.
Hey everybody, it's Alice from Lone Design Club, and I'm joined by a very special guest today, Alicia Lovejoy of Fashion Revolution. She'll be joining us in just a few seconds, so watch this space. But obviously it is Fashion Revolution week. I don't know about you guys, but we are extremely excited, and we are going to be exploring lots of different concepts this week and talking about all things sustainability. And Alicia is just going to join us now. So we'll just be going through a few questions about Fashion Revolution and everything involved, and then talking a little bit about an exciting event we have coming up. And if you do have any questions, just write them in the comment, and if we don't get round to them, you can just DM and we'll get round to them after. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today, Alicia. Thank you for joining us to chat about all things Fashion Revolution and everything that's going on this week. We're all very excited at LDC, so it's great to have you involved. And obviously there's lots going on, so I'm sure everyone's really keen to know a bit more. So it'd be great if you could just give us a quick introduction to yourself and your involvement in Fashion Revolution.
Sure, and apologies because I know you're trying to talk to the audience and try and get me in as well, so I'm here now.
No worries.
So I'm Alicia, thanks so much for having me. I'm part of the policy and research team at Fashion Revolution, and for those of you who aren't familiar, Fashion Revolution is a global movement campaigning for a better fashion industry, so that's both in terms of better for the environment, better for the people that are within it and those who wear it. And we've been around since 2013 when there was a incident with the Rana Plaza factory collapse, which killed over 1,000 people making clothes for many of the high street brands that we all love and were wearing. And we kind of felt like, as a group of many different people working in that space in the fashion industry, felt like enough was enough, and we all came together, and we just couldn't have imagined that we'd be where we are now, few years later. But obviously with the COVID situation around the globe, it is also more apparent than ever why we really do need to use our voices and be pushing brands and governments for better practices for all those people who work within the garment industry.
It is amazing how far it's come, Fashion Revolution, actually, since it started. I've been following it closely, and it is great to see that it's now this incredible global movement and does so much good in the industry. So we're really honoured to have you.
It's overwhelming, actually, for all of us. We never imagined it to be that big. And sorry, I just wanted to take a moment there to say that it's actually because of people like you who have been with us from the start, because we are really only Fashion Revolution because we're a global community of people. So sometimes people say like us as though it's the UK team, but I really wanted to just say it's actually everyone. It's everyone that's tuned in today. It's everyone that's tuning in to anything you guys put on this week. It's really, it's because everybody's come together that Fashion Revolution exists.
Yeah, that's a great message. And it's all about community. And I think more now than ever, that's important, right? So it's great to see. And obviously, like you said, like COVID-19 is having a real impact on the industry in many different ways. So it's interesting to explore that at the moment as well. What are the key themes for this year's Fashion Revolution for 2020?
So I'm going to put it up because I keep getting it wrong, because we've had a long week in preparation, but we've got composition.
No worries. I think there's 4 main ones, is that right?
Yeah, composition, consumption, conditions, and collective action. So we've got 4 C's, and we just keep tongue-tying ourselves getting through them.
So briefly, what do those mean? For someone who doesn't know that much about sustainable fashion or what Fashion Revolution is.
So we've got consumption, and that's where we're going to be talking and looking at the amount of clothing we're purchasing around the globe and whether that's really sustainable, which most of us know by now it's not. We're consuming too much, and that's having really negative impacts on both our living environment, but also the people who are making those clothes, because they're having to produce too quickly and turning over too much. So that's really the overall arching theme of what we'll be looking at under that. We were actually planning on to have a massive global clothes swap and really activate on a community level, but unfortunately that's had to be postponed, but we'll really be driving the conversation around that. And then we have composition, which is actually under composition we're launching. So actually, let me talk about conditions first, and then it will lead on to composition.
Yeah,
so
no.
Under conditions, I think that one's a little bit more clear, but it's really talking about the conditions for the people who make our clothes across the planet. And that's anything from gender equality, unionization, freedom of association. It could be to do with modern slavery, any of these topics that we do often talk about year round are kind of sitting under the conditions thing.
Yeah.
And we do have our hashtag and campaign, which is one of the reasons Fashion Revolution is so large, which is the Who Made My Clothes and the I Made My Clothes campaign, which is running now. And that fits under that kind of conditions conversation. Yeah. And then I'll go back to what I was saying about the composition is a new one for us, where we really want to think more and talk more about what's in our clothes. So the fibers that we wear, what's happened to those fibers, for instance, when it's come from a farm or an animal, and all of the different stages of production. We're not really that familiar with what happens to our textiles, and that goes on our skin. And so we really want to dive into the composition of what we're wearing. And we've launched a new hashtag, which is what's in my clothes. So we really want to start asking brands to let us know more about that, what's happening inside our clothes. Under that, we'll also be talking about what polyester is, what it's made from. So, viscose is made from trees and forests, and how do you need to kind of start to understand, okay, what does a certified viscose look like? What does it not? And we're going to be talking about different kind of fibers and textiles, and really getting more into the crux of that. And then lastly, we've got the collective action, which we wanted to do both on a community level and within the supply chain. And that's coming back to, again, that you can have a lot more strength and impact when you all come together. As we started by saying, the Fashion Revolution wouldn't even be as strong or where it is now without its global community. And we really want to talk about that across the board. I think even within the UK now, many of our friends are losing their jobs, and it's how we really come together as societies, of groups of people, to implement the change that we want to see happen.
Amazing. So 4 very powerful, the 4 C's, very powerful. And that's great. I think the composition thing is extremely important as well at the moment. I think that's something that is probably the next step in getting a bit more transparency into the fashion industry and really understanding what that's all about. So that's great. And these themes, obviously, some people might relate more to one or another, or might be drawn more to one or another. How do people get involved, whether a brand or a consumer? What's the best way to get involved with Fashion Revolution at this time, given that obviously the physical events aren't happening, like you said, the clothes swap isn't happening? What's the best way to get involved this week?
Yeah, there's a million different ways, and we're even surprised constantly by the creativity of people and what they do. So I'd say first and foremost, if you have an idea of how you want to get involved, roll with that. If you need a starting point, then we do have guides, and we've launched a digital guide of how to get involved. So all of the ways that you can activate online from the safety of your home, but really support that global community, such as these Instagram lives are a perfect example of that. There's many other ways. As I said, you can use the hashtag. We've got other campaigns going, which are love stories. So that's where you talk about the history of a piece of clothing.
I like
all of those things. Oh, great, you've seen.
Yeah.
All of these things drive the conversation. We're seeing a lot of press happening if you share those articles. And it's a bit of a kind of mixing pot, because the more that you put your voice into that in whichever way, the more other people join in that, and the larger our collective voices come. And if we're all whether you address one, two, or four of those themes, we're all adding to each other's voice, and that's really where we're talking back again about the collective action. So whether it's if you want to put on an event, I know there's some people who have been putting on their own webinars. There's many different ways. We also have zines, which if you just want to learn and understand more, and maybe you don't want to shout right now, but you want to just know more, then we've got a lot of really interesting information and resources on the website. So dive into that. And we haven't announced it yet, but we'll be launching an online course, which we ran last year, around fashion and the sustainable development goals.
Oh, amazing. I actually did that course.
Oh, awesome.
I've
so
done
we're going to relaunch that.
With Future Learn, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I did it. I dipped in and out of it last year when I had time. I love learning. For me, there's never enough. Sorry, can't find my words. You can't stop learning in this area of sustainable fashion. Ever since I got interested in it, it just never ends. I love how there's always more to know and more to educate yourself on. So yeah, recommend the course, guys. I mean, I might check into it again because I definitely didn't complete all of it, so I might have a look at it again. That's great. And I think
it's coming back. So that's really great. And I totally agree with you. I'm constantly learning. I mean, all of these conversations, every time I speak to somebody, I'm learning something new and interesting. And I think our understanding is evolving as well. So
sorry, I disappeared for a second there. No, exactly. Okay, that's great. So that's one way that we can get involved as well. If you're a bit newer to Fashion Revolution, you could sign up to the course and learn a bit more and start sort of learning that way, I suppose.
And watch some of the really interesting conversations. We have a YouTube channel which is recording some really interesting panels, which I haven't managed to attend many of, but I'm going to be watching some of those back. So there'll be tons of information.
Okay, brilliant. And LDC and Fashion Revolution are doing, sorry about the technical thing there, I don't know what my phone was doing. We are hosting it.
Makes up for my entrance.
So you think you know sustainable fashion. We are doing a quiz. You know, everyone's doing quizzes these days, but hopefully this one is a great one. And that's with Fashion Revolution, and Patrick Duffy will be our quiz master. So that's taking place on Sunday at 5 p.m. What do you think? Obviously, this is meant to be fun and it's meant to be a community engagement activity, also a chance for donations for Fashion Revolution, where people are willing. And what do you think we can learn from doing something like this? Obviously, it's, you know, it might tie in kind of to a learning course, but obviously this is slightly more just 1 hour of fun questions. What do you think people can learn from doing something like this?
I mean, I have a lot of trick questions, probably, where there's multiple answers. I think a lot of around sustainability, for instance, a question that I still don't have answered is what sustainability actually means. Different brands do it in different ways, so it could be interesting to do some questions around that. But I think that I would, as you said, it's a more of a fun conversation, and rather than a harsh getting into a lot of the information out there is very hard to understand and verify, but I think there's definitely some fun conversations and questions we could just ask about how people view that. I mean, we could name 5 of the most sustainable brands, and that would just give you an example of how everybody's kind of measuring these things in different ways. Maybe I can wrap it up there for us, because I know that Alice had pre-run me over the questions, and I know that was actually one of the last ones, so I know we're coming to the end. So I'll take over and wrap it up. I think we've got some questions from Joss coming in. Joss is part of the Fashion Revolution team, full disclosure, I should let everybody know that. But what she's saying, speaking of quizzes, we have an annual Fashion Revolution quiz too, which is always a winner. So we should check that out. I didn't even know about that one, actually. So I will find that, and I'll let the team know, because maybe we can borrow some of the questions from there. Joss said, is that the one you'll be using? But I don't think that is the one. I think Learn Design Club were making their own quiz up. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. But we'll definitely check that out. And if anyone else has any questions at all, then perhaps we can just continue this on a thread, or on Sunday I'll be back again for the quiz. So hopefully my IT skills will be a bit better then, so I can participate. All right, I think we'll say thank you so much and see you all on Sunday.
Thank you so much again for tuning in. Head to our website, loanddesignclub.com, and find more LDCFM podcasts, or discover more about our independent designers online.